For the first time in his experience, Bostil found that horse trading palled upon him. This trip to Durango was a failure. Something was wrong. There was a voice constantly calling into his inner ear, a voice to which he refused to listen, and during the 5 days of the return trip, the strange mood grew upon him. The last day he and his riders covered 50 miles and reached the ford late at night. No one expected them, and only the men on duty at the corrals knew of the return. Bostil, much relieved to get home, went to bed and at once fell asleep. He awakened at a late hour for him. When he dressed and went out to the kitchen, he found that his sister had learned of his return and had breakfast waiting.
"Where's the girl?"
asked Bostil.
"Not up yet,"
replied Aunt Jane.
"What?"
"Lucy and I had a tiff last night, and she went to her room in a temper."
Nothing new about that."
"Holly and I have had our troubles holding her in. Don't you forget that."
Bostil laughed.
"Well, call her and tell her I'm home."
Aunt Jane did as she was bidden. Bostil finished his breakfast, but Lucy did not come. Bostil began to feel something strange, and going to Lucy's door he knocked. There was no reply. Bostil pushed open the door. Lucy was not in evidence, and her room was not as tidy as usual. Bostil gazed around with a queer contraction of the heart. The sense of something amiss grew stronger. Then he saw a chair before the open window. That window was rather high, and Lucy had placed a chair before it so that she could look out or get out. Bostil stretched his neck, looked out, and in the red earth beneath the window he saw fresh tracks of Lucy's boots. Then he roared for Jane. She came running, and between Bostil's furious questions and her own excited answers there was nothing arrived at. But presently she spied the white dress, and then she ran to Lucy's closet. From there she turned a white face to Bostil.
"She put on her riding clothes," gasped Aunt Jane.
"Supposing she did. Where is she?"
demanded Bostil.
"She's run off with Sloane."
Bostil could not have been shocked or hurt any more acutely by a knife thrust. He glared at his sister.
"Uh-huh. So that's the way you watch her."
"Watch her? It wasn't possible. She's as smart as you are. Oh, I knew she'd do it. She was wild in love with him."
Bostil strode out of the room and the house. He went through the grove and directly up the path to Sloane's cabin. It was empty, just as Bostil expected to find it. The bars of the corral were down. Both Sloane's horses were gone. Presently Bostil saw the black horse Nagger down in Bracton's pasture. There were riders in front of Bracton's. All spoke at once to Bostil, and he yelled only for Bracton. The old man came hurriedly out, alarmed.
"Where's this Sloane?"
demanded Bostil.
"Sloane?"
ejaculated Bracton.
"I'm blessed if I know. Ain't he home?"
"No, and he's left his black hoss in your field."
"Well, by golly, that's news to me. Bostil, there's been strange doings lately."
Bracton seemed at a loss for words.
"Maybe Sloane got out because of something that came off last night. Now Joel Creech and...
Bostil waited to hear no more. What did he care about this idiot Creech? He strode down the lane to the corrals. Farland, Van, and other riders were there, leisurely as usual. Then Holly appeared, coming out of the barn. He too was easy, cool, natural, lazy. None of these riders knew what was amiss, but instantly a change passed over them. It came because Bostil pulled a gun.
"Holly, I've a mind to bore you."
The old hawk-eyed rider did not flinch or turn a shade of color.
"What for?"
he queried, but his customary drawl was wanting.
"I left you to watch Lucy, and she's gone."
Holly showed genuine surprise and distress. The other riders echoed Bostil's last word. Bostil lowered the gun.
I reckon what saves you is you're the only tracker that ever showed to find this cussed Sloane.
Holly now showed no sign of surprise, but the other riders were astounded.
Lucy's run off with Sloane,
added Bostil.
Well, if she's gone and if he's gone, it's a cinch,
replied Holly, throwing up his hands.
Boss, she double-crossed me same as you. She promised faithful to stay in the house. Promises nothing, roared Bostil. She's in love with this wild hoss wrangler. She made him last night. I couldn't help that, retorted Holly, and I trusted the girl.
Bostil tossed his hands. He struggled with his rage. He had no fear that Lucy would not soon be found, but the opposition to his will made him furious. Van left the group of riders and came close to Bostil.
It ain't an hour back that I seen Sloane ride off alone on his red hoss. What of that? Demanded Bostil. Sure she was waiting somewheres. They'd have too much sense to go together. Saddle up, you boys, and we'll...
Say, Bostil, I happen to know Sloane didn't see Lucy last night, interrupted Holly.
Uh-huh. You better talk out.
I trusted Lucy, said Holly, but all the same, knowing she was in love, I just wanted to see if any girl in love could keep her word. So about dark, I went down to the grove and watched for Sloane. Pretty soon I seen him. He sneaked along the upper end and I follered. He went to that bench up by the biggest cottonwood and he waited a long time. But Lucy didn't come. He must have waited till midnight. Then he left. I watched him go back. Seen him go up to his cabin.
Well, if she didn't meet him, where was she? She wasn't in her room.
Bostil gazed at Holly and the other riders, then back to Holly. What was the matter with this old rider? Bostil had never seen Holly seem so strange. The whole affair began to loom strangely, darkly. Some portent quickened Bostil's lumbering pulse. It seemed that Holly's mind must have found an obstacle to thought. Suddenly the old rider's face changed. The bronze was blotted out. A grayness came, and then a dead white.
Bostil, maybe you ain't been told yet that Creech rode in yesterday. He lost all his racers. He had to shoot both Peg and Roan.
Bostil's thoughts suffered a sudden blank halt. Then with realization came the shock for which he had long been prepared.
Uh-huh. Is that so? Well, and what did he say?
Holly laughed a grim, significant laugh that curdled Bostil's blood.
Creech said a lot, but let that go now. Come with me.
Holly started with rapid strides down the lane. Bostil followed, and he heard the riders coming behind. A dark and gloomy thought settled upon Bostil. He could not check that, but he held back impatience and passion. Holly went straight to Lucy's window. He got down on his knees to scrutinize the tracks.
"I made more'n 12 hours ago,"
he said swiftly.
"She had on her boots, but no spurs. Now let's see where she went."
Holly began to trail Lucy's progress through the grove, silently pointing now and then to a track. He went swifter till Bostil had to hurry. The other men came whispering after them. Holly was as keen as a hound on a scent.
"She stopped there," he said. "Maybe it'll listen. Looks like she wanted to cross the lane, but she didn't. Here, she got to going faster."
Holly reached an intersecting path and suddenly halted stock still, pointing at a big track in the dust.
"My God! Bostil, look at that!"
One riving pang tore through Bostil, and then he was suddenly his old self, facing the truth of danger to one he loved. He saw beside the big track a faint imprint of Lucy's small boot. This was the last sign of her progress, and it told a story.
"Bostil, that ain't Sloane's track,"
said Holly ringingly.
"Sure it ain't. That's the track of a big man."
replied Bostil. The other riders, circling round with bent heads, all said one way or another that Sloane could not have made the trail.
And whoever he was grabbed Lucy up. Made off with her? Asked Bostil. Plain as if we seen it done, exclaimed Holly. There was fire in the clear hawk eyes. Courts! Cried Bostil hoarsely. Maybe, but that ain't my idea. Come on.
Holly went so fast he almost ran, and he got ahead of Bostil. Finally, several 100 yards out in the sage, he halted, and again dropped to his knees. Bostil and the riders hurried on.
Keep back. Don't stamp round so close,
ordered Holly. Then, like a man searching for lost gold in sand and grass, he searched the ground. To Bostil it seemed a long time before he got through. When he arose, there was a dark and deadly certainty in his face, by which Bostil knew the worst had befallen Lucy.
4 mustangs and 2 men last night, said Holly rapidly. Here's where Lucy was set down on her feet. Here's where she mounted. And here's the tracks of a 3rd man. Tracks made this morning.
Bostil straightened up and faced Holly as if ready to take a death blow.
I reckon them last is Sloane's tracks. Yes, I know them, replied Holly. And them other tracks? Who made them? Creech and his son.
Bostil felt swept away by a dark, whirling flame, and when it passed he lay in his barn in the shade of the loft, prostrate on the fragrant hay. His strength with his passion was spent. A dull ache remained. The fight was gone from him. His spirit was broken, and he looked down into that dark abyss which was his own soul. By and by riders came for him, got him up, led him out. He shook them off and stood breathing slowly. The air felt refreshing. It cooled his hot, tired brain. It did not surprise him to see Joel Creech there, cringing behind Holly. Bostil lifted a hand for someone to speak, and Holly came a step forward. His face was haggard, but its white tenseness was gone. He seemed as if he were reluctant to speak, to inflict more pain.
Bostil, he began huskily, you're to send the king and Sarch and Ben and Two-Face and Plume to ransom Lucy. And if you won't, then Creech'll sell her to courts.
What a strange look came into the faces of the riders. Did they think he cared more for horseflesh than for his own flesh and blood?
Send the king, and all he wants. And send word for Creech to come back to the ford. Tell him I said my sin found me out.
Bostil watched Joel Creech ride the king out upon the slope, driving the others ahead. Sage King wanted to run. Sarch Dawn was wild and unruly. They passed out of sight. Then Bostil turned to his silent riders.
Boys, seeing the king go that way wasn't nothing. But what crucifies me is, will that fetch her back? God only knows, replied Holly. Maybe not. I reckon not. But Bostil, you forget Sloane is out there on Lucy's trail. Out there ahead of Joel. Sloane, he's a wild horse hunter. The keenest I ever seen. Do you think Creech can shake him on a trail? He'll kill Creech, and he'll lay for Joel going back, and he'll kill him, and I'll bet my all he'll ride in here with Lucy and the king. Holly, you ain't figuring on that red hoss of Sloane's riding down the king.
Holly laughed as if Bostil's query was the strangest thing of all the poignant day.
Nah, Sloane'll lay for Joel and rope him like he roped Dick Sears. Holly, I reckon you see clearer than me, said Bostil plaintively. 'Pears as if I never had a hard knock before, for my nerves broke. I can't hope. Lucy's gone. Ain't there anything to do but wait? That's all, just wait. If we went out on Joel's trail, we'd queer the chance of Creech being honest. And we'd queer Sloane's game. I'd hate to have him trailing me.